Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Ned Bellavance, Ned1313 on Twitter, and welcome to the Daily Chicken for December 11th, 2020. It is Friday, which is exciting for me. It's the last day of Tech Field Day, which is a little sad. A little sad. I enjoyed participating in Tech Field Day 22. Today's topic is going to be the presentation that I watched today, or interacted with, I should say, all about VMware Disaster Recovery Cloud, their DR as a service. And it's good enough. Good enough for me. Good enough for you. Good enough for Goonies. I don't know. That's what I'm going to talk about today. I have some thoughts. I have some ideas. So we're going to run through that. That's what I'm going to cover today. Quick reminder. I also have a podcast called Day 2 Cloud. So if you're interested in like day 2 operations of the cloud and all things cloudy, we just had a fantastic episode with Corey Quinn that dropped this week. And next week, we have another great episode with Eric Wright talking about Kubernetes. We're talking about cloud spend. There's a lot of cool stuff in there. So I will leave a link down in the description if you're interested in a fun podcast about cloudy things. So with that out of the way, let's check in. How you doing? What's going on? How's Friday? I mean, you made it. You made it to the end of the week. So good for you. It was a busy week. My brain was buzzing, lots of bees all over the place. But now we're at the end. And now I can relax a little bit. So I don't know about you. I'm looking forward to the weekend. Sometimes it can get all like jammed up with holiday stuff. But this weekend, the only thing we're doing is making gingerbread houses. And I am all about that because I get to eat gumdrops when the kids aren't looking. So that should be a lot of fun for me. All right, let's talk about this VMware Cloud Disaster Recovery. Now, this is an idea that a lot of companies are sort of undertaking at this point. Instead of you installing a bunch of equipment to provide disaster recovery, instead, we're going to provide the control plane as a service and then also provide the destination site kind of as a service. Because when it comes down to disaster recovery, there's 3 main concerns that most organizations will have. Time. I don't have enough time to put together a DR plan and test it. Cost. It costs way too much to maintain a full second site of equipment. Even if you take your like aged off equipment and put it in the second site, you still have to pay for rack space and cooling and all that kind of stuff. It's too darn expensive. And then the last one is complexity or capacity. I'd say complexity is probably the third one. The solution is too complex. It's too hard to recover my applications. I don't have a solid plan and I don't have the time to do it. So these are sort of the things like time, money, and just general complexity along with the know-how of your internal people. It's a lot. It's a lot to cover. And I understand that. And so the idea behind VMware's Cloud DR is to make some portion of that easier for you. Now, what does that mean? Well, they provide the control plane. So they host the UI that runs in VMware's, wherever their cloud is running. And then the recovery site where you're recovering your stuff is going to be in VMware on AWS, also called VMC. And I'm just going to call it VMC for short. VMware VMC runs on AWS, and that's their only target right now. So for starters, you have to be comfortable with the solution only supporting VMware on AWS right now. At some point down the line, it will support other destinations, but right now that's the only option. And part of that is because of the storage mechanism they're using for your data that's being replicated. The VMware Cloud DR came from a separate company that VMware purchased. And so they brought over their technology, and it was primarily a storage technology. Isn't that interesting? So the thing that they're really focused on initially was their hardware and their software-defined storage. And they've implemented that software-defined storage up in the cloud using AWS and some of the primitives there. So basically, if you look at the presentation, it's at the bottom, it's using the object store, which is S3, but then it has a bunch of layers on top of that that are probably using some EC2 instances and maybe some other services in AWS. And they haven't moved that over to another cloud yet. So for that reason, the storage is in AWS and VMware's VMC is in AWS. So you have to be comfortable with that being your destination. Okay. So assuming you're comfortable with that, we'll start there. Second thing is it's only going to replicate virtual machines that are in your existing VMware environment. So you have to have everything that you care about for disaster recovery running in VMware. Now, for some organizations, that's not a problem. Everything they have is on VMware. They got rid of their physical machines a while ago. But for other organizations, that's a big problem because you may have other systems that are not virtualized, and this is not an option for you. So, okay, I have to be comfortable with AWS. I have to be fully virtualized on VMware to do the replication. What other things do I need to fit into for this? Well, the minimum RPO right now, that's the recovery point objective. This is how much data you're going to lose in the event of a disaster. The current RPO is 4 hours. So, in addition to the previous 2 points, you also have to be able to lose up to 4 hours of your data in a disaster, and that be okay. That might be okay for some businesses. They may not care about losing that. In the event of a true disaster, they can survive on 4 hours of lost data. Maybe it has other copies somewhere else. That's all right. What they need to do is be back up. Okay, so I need to be comfortable with that 4-hour thing. And they did say, the engineers on the call, on the presentation, said they're working on lowering that to something smaller, like 1 hour. But right now it's 4 hours. All right. What is the final thing that I have to be comfortable with? Well, I have to be comfortable with their UI because there's no other way to consume the product. There's no CLI to consume the product, and there's no API that's externally exposed. They said they have an internal API that they're using, but that API is not externally exposed. So I have to be comfortable with the fact that I can't snap this into other tool sets that are part of my disaster recovery program or communication tools I use. Maybe I'm using Slack and I want to integrate it with that. Maybe I'm using ServiceNow and I want it to be integrated with my ticketing system. Right now, I have no hooks into this system to be able to extract information except through the UI. So for me, a lot of that stuff could be problematic depending on the company. But there are companies that absolutely fit this mold. And if you fit this mold, there's a bunch of good news here because the product, as they showed us, has a ton of good functionality. Now let's start with the fact that it's a managed portal. You don't have to run that portal. You don't have to run, manage, and maintain that control plane. All right. It's relatively low cost. You pay for the virtual machines you want to protect and the amount of capacity you're using on that storage system that's up in AWS. And you pay for VMC when you're running it. But when you're not running it, you're not paying anything. And that's the beauty of the cloud, right? You can scale up and scale down. Well, DR is the ultimate scale up, scale down, because when you're not actively needing DR, it would be great to shut it all down and stop paying for it. So you're in that scenario already. Because it's all VMware based, you're running VMC in your disaster recovery site and you're running VMware on premises. Due to that, you get a consistent experience for your virtualization admins. They are going to be working in the same, vSphere client that they're used to for when they're on-prem and when they're at the disaster recovery site. They also showed how they protect from ransomware. The replicated copies that go up go into a file system that only VMware has access to, and every object that's written is immutable, cannot be overwritten, which means when something new is updated, that's written as a new object. And so you won't corrupt the older objects. You can always recover from a ransomware attack. And they said something like 36% of DR incidences are actually because of ransomware. So that's good. You're covered. And the last thing they showed was orchestrated recovery. They have a whole workflow that you can go through where you can have groupings of virtual machines that form applications. And within that grouping, you have a series of steps to bring that application up. And then zoom out a little bit, you can put these, I think they're called protection groups, in an order that you want things to come up in. So, generally speaking, a full disaster, you're going to have to bring up your domain controllers and what provides DNS and other shared services first before you can start bringing up your applications. And then you might have a dependency tree of applications and a priority in which things need to come up. So all of that was pretty cool. The other thing they showed is because of the way they can present their storage as NFS to your VMC, which means that you can immediately mount and spin up your virtual machines in a very small amount of time. So the RTO, the recovery time objective, is actually very, very small. Right? We're talking minutes, not hours, to have an environment back up. And then once it comes up, it does a storage vMotion under the covers to move that virtual machine onto the SDDC hardware running in VMC. That's a little bit faster and more performant, but at least you get a dial tone. You get up quickly. So I guess what I'm saying is, if your company fits the profile that VMware Cloud DR is aiming at, then this is an absolutely great fit for you. But if you step out of the boundary that they've defined for their product, it is not going to be a good fit for you, and you should keep moving on. And maybe that's the whole point, right? One of the things that the head of this division sort of hammered home at the end was they're laser focused on delighting customers that meet their use case today. That's what they want to do. They want to be laser focused on that, and that's what they're doing, and then they'll expand out. So if there were two things that I would say they really need to focus on, one is opening up that API, because any customer is going to want that basically. And number two is lowering that RPO, because that's going to be prohibitive for some customers. They really do need something that's a little bit like 1 hour they could lose, or 15 minutes for really important systems. Have a sliding RPO depending on the system type and what guarantees you want to make. So that's my thoughts on the presentation. I will include a link down in the description once the videos are available. Aside from that, I'm done for the week. So I'm going to go have a good weekend. You have a good weekend. And until next time, stay healthy, stay safe out there. Bye for now.